Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunday, July the 5th. Today is not only an Uposatha day, it is the Asalha Puja. So, one of the three important Buddhist holidays. So, follows very quickly on the Visakha Puja, which is the second of the, actually, the second. I confuse myself sometimes. Okay, well, how is everyone this morning? We've survived all the explosions and gunplay here last night, which went on well past 10 o'clock. Celebrating Independence Day. Let's see who is all here on this good Sunday, the Asalha Puja. 46 people. So those who are not familiar with these Buddhist holidays, the significance of today's observance is commemorating the Buddha giving his first formal or structured teaching in the form of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, setting the wheel of Dhamma into motion. So, and I think we'll go back to chanting that tonight to commemorate it. This traditional thing to do on a day like today. We've been chanting the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, or the discourse on not self, non-self, for several days now. But on tonight's special occasion, we'll recite the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. So, the setting of the wheel of Dhamma into motion, where the Buddha declares that he has found this middle way that avoids the extremes of trying to find the end of suffering or happiness and fulfillment in sensuality and embracing sensuality as your chief strategy. And he has rejected the extreme of asceticism. And he has found a middle way, or a middling way, avoiding those extremes. And that is the Noble Eightfold Path. So, as I'm sure almost all of you are aware, that is the teaching, the canonical teaching, where the Buddha talks about the Four Noble Truths in their three aspects. So, suffering, the origins of suffering, which is this tanha that I keep going on about, this thirsting, wrong relationship to the desire structures. Cessation of suffering and the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So this, some of the significance of this isn't just the Buddha gives this teaching, and what distinguishes the Gautama Buddha, who's a Sammasambuddha, from, say, a silent Buddha or a Pacceka Buddha, is he has the paramita, he has the characteristics, he's taken up some inspiration or inclination to try to communicate and convey this Dhamma and discipline that has won him the freedom from suffering, the attainment of escape from birth and death that he had intuited for 6 or more years was possible. despite uh, others telling him otherwise, or being uh, identifying that as being in something that he didn't identify as being completely yet free from birth and death. So, and the Buddha returns to the presence of the 5 ascetics that he had been practicing with, and they hadn't been very impressed with his humanity, his return to humanity. Remember, Ajahn Sona talks about how the Bodhisattva is practicing these austerities to a very strong extent, and his body is weak and famished from extreme fasting, and he realizes that's not the way, and he gives up that harsh and bitter way of practice, the extreme of asceticism, and reestablishes a very humane, caring relationship for the body, taking nourishment. So when he comes into the presence of these 5 former ascetics, at first they're not inclined to welcome him, because he's that guy who gave up, who decided to return to an indulgent life of a samana. But as he comes into their presence, there's something about him that arouses a sense of confidence and faith, and they invite him to sit down, and in time he teaches the noble truths of suffering, the causes of suffering, the possibility for cessation, and the way leading to cessation. So, and given how hard it is to change ourselves, and how much harder it is to help another make meaningful change. And later the Buddha will go on to talk about this. There's this wonderful sutta where, I forget who it is, one of the monks is praising all the Buddha's miraculous and marvelous kind of qualities. And he kind of finishes this whole list. And the Buddha says, well, you know what else is marvelous and miraculous about the Buddha? And he adds, like, he has the ability to teach. And in the kind of culture, mythology around the Buddha is that he has a special capacity to teach. Like, he's a clever and insightful sort of person, and he knows how to meet somebody where they're at and offer them teaching, advice, and guidance. In fact, the Buddha is said to survey the world in the early morning to see who's ripe, who's in a place that is especially opportune for them to receive a teaching. And then he would set off and go seek them out. So historically, what I think is of equal importance that the Buddha expounds this is that he's able to communicate it. And he's able to communicate it in a way that doesn't bring all of them to enlightenment immediately. But the oldest of the 5 ascetics, the Venerable Kandanya, he gets it. So if you look at the English translation of our chanting, towards the very end, the way it's translated is, when the Buddha was done speaking, the spotless, immaculate vision of the Dhamma arose in the Venerable Kandanya. And the way it's expressed is he sees that everything that is subject to arising is subject to cessation. Everything that has the nature to arise has the nature to cease. And that's interpreted as a declaration of him attaining the first stage of enlightenment or awakening. So he doesn't become an arahant, but the Dhamma eye opens. Or maybe he does. I can't remember technically. My memory for these things sometimes is not what it should be. And I like this. I mean, it's quite nice. Embedded, like a very quick way to remember what we're pointing to when we talk about samaditi, our right view, and what is often pointed to as central in the Buddhist conception of the wisdom that supports this process of awakening is the teaching of the Four Noble Truths and the three characteristics. And so here we have this exposition largely given over to avoiding the extremes of asceticism and devotion to sense pleasure, the exposition of the Four Noble Truths, including the Eightfold Path, and then at the end, Kandanya getting it. But he doesn't sort of declare anything about the Four Noble Truths. He declares something about the characteristic of anicca, how things are of the nature to arise and cease. So, and I think it's not only anicca. I mean, it's really speaking to this teaching of conditionality, which is so embedded in the suttas as well. So, and very much, very intricately kind of related to the characteristic of anicca. So it's all right there. You have the middle way, the Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, and this insight into the teaching of conditionality and anicca. And the Buddha gives this teaching, and he's all of a sudden not alone in the world in having this enlightenment experience or enlightenment knowledge. So, and then he takes a little bit more time to get the others over the hump. So, doesn't happen right away, not with one teaching. So, a few years ago, me and Venerable Jagannanda were talking about this and trying to remember chronologically how this seems to unfold. And it's interesting how much, say, Jataka stories and commentarial stories influence your memories around these things. And so we were trying to sort of take a fresh look at this, like looking at just what's there in the canon, or the Vinaya Pitaka in particular, and the Sutta Pitaka. So, and there's quite a bit of information in the Mahavagga of the Vinaya Pitaka, and it doesn't paint a complete narrative of what happened, but it seems relatively clear from what's there that they all didn't get enlightened, and then there was like this period of time. So it's like the Buddha didn't give like 3 talks right away, or he didn't give the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta and then launch right into the Anattalakkana Sutta, but they took turns going alms round so that the Buddha could continue having time to talk with them and teach with them. And I would think even maybe have spiritual dialogue till they could come around to sort of understanding in a transformative way this enlightenment experience. So, and so we go from having a Buddha in the world to having the Buddha who's expounded the Dhamma and it's been received, it's been successfully communicated to Kundanya and then the other 5 ascetics. And then you have a Sangha. Then you have a community of awakened beings. So that's the significance of the Asalha Puja, historical significance. It also marks the beginning of the monsoon season in the Magadha, or middle part of Southeast Asia, or South Asia. So, and therefore in the Buddhist calendar, it marks the transition into the Vassa period. So, as I mentioned yesterday. So, just share a little reminder and reflection about the observance today for everyone. I got 4 thumbs up and only 1 thumbs down. Who is that person? Every once in a while, there's somebody that slips in here and gives me the thumbs down. All right, well, let's see what's on everyone else's mind here this morning. See, I see Eleanor here. Good morning, Eleanor. Another question about prayers. Okay. What do you do when you want to ask for protection? Say thanks or ask for forgiveness? Is there a way to do this in Buddhism? There is. There are ways. So, I mean, let me put that back up. Oh yeah, and there was a follow-up. Can we address the Buddha for these types of prayers? So, I'll have to give a couple answers here to this. So, to answer the second part, can we address the Buddha for these types of prayers? I think most of the Buddhist world does, including in Thailand. There is a lot of petitionary prayer to the Buddha, and even to other spiritual heroes. And I'm not very conversant with it, having ordained in the forest tradition. That sort of thing isn't talked about or encouraged so much, but the popular expression of Buddhism, even in Thailand, and I have to imagine this is probably true in other societies because of that tendency in the human mind to long for the power that exists in that petitionary form of prayer is so attractive to humans in human society. So, so people do, and that's a popular expression, but it's not kind of encouraged, because our understanding is the Buddha is nowhere to be found. So he says, after his parinibbana, neither gods nor humans will see him. So he doesn't say, and then people try to pin him down, like, does he exist? Does he not exist? Does he both exist and not exist? Or neither exist or not exist? And he kind of rejects even that way of conceiving of him, and also dismisses the question as not being all that kind of relevant. The main thing is to do good and cultivate the path. So, but so coming back to this, like, what do you do when you want to ask for protection? Like, one is there are protective chants that are also common and popular. The Karaniya Metta chant, which what do we translate with the Discourse on Loving Kindness. I can't remember what it's titled in our chanting book. Look it up really quick. But that one actually surfaces in the suttas as one that the Buddha sort of says that one can chant for protection. And there are a bunch of other ones. Like if you look in our chanting book in the volume 2, the collection of paritas, those are chants that are customarily sort of done for protection. So the Buddha's words on loving kindness. So that's the translation for the Karaniya Metta Sutta. So that's one that you can chant for protection. People often, also people chant just the triple homage. That's very commonly sort of chanted. There's all kinds of stories of monks encountering fearful things in the forest and chanting Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa to focus the mind and to help overcome fear. And that's used as a protective chant. So I would say the more macro thing is to cultivate the path, though, and to reflect on that. So cultivate generosity, virtue, loving kindness, and through a consistent kind of cultivation of those things, they have a protective quality. Loving kindness, especially. I mentioned this relatively recently. There's 2 suttas that talk about the 8 and the 11 benefits of cultivating loving kindness. So, but I have great faith that being a good person and being devoted to the good, cultivating the good, especially cultivating selfless giving and generosity, virtue, and loving kindness, I believe they bring you real protection, not ultimate protection. I mean, that can't be found in this realm. But I believe they bring you real protection, and more importantly, they foster a kind of psychological protective quality. One develops a kind of self-confidence and a freedom from remorse and a sense of blamelessness that really goes a long way to helping us deal with anxiety, fear, doubt. So, so being devoted to that, and in some sense, like you build an identity that you're making efforts in those ways. You're devoted to that, and I think that provides a protective quality to the mind. To say thanks or ask for forgiveness, we actually have a form for asking for forgiveness, and it's something that's done in a ritual way, and also as a way to kind of clear any difficulties that have arisen in relationship, subtle or profound, so that we can move on and not be stuck in what went wrong or some sort of sense of being hurt. Um, I'm not sure. That's also in our chanting book, I believe. So if you look for the asking for forgiveness, um, and the basic form is just approaching someone and asking for forgiveness for anything that one has done by body, speech, or mind, either intentionally or unintentionally. Uh, and so much of forgiveness is really not about the other extending that to you, but um, you being appropriately remorseful or appropriately cognizant of wrongdoing, acknowledging um, difficulty or wrongdoing or harm, and then letting go of that, like determining to do better, acknowledging what went wrong, what was unskillful, and then determining to do better. So, okay, moving on. Good morning, Dhammapala. Any ideas for what special things to do with one's young kids who suddenly have an interest in Buddhism on the Uposatha? We've done some chanting, and where's the follow-up? 5 precepts, but wondering if there are any other ideas. So, yeah, Dhammapala, that's great, and that's a great start. Kids, not all, but sometimes kids really like that. And just teaching them the basic rituals of Buddhism can be good fun, and it's a good age-appropriate kind of focus for kids. Teaching them how to pay respects to the shrine, to bow, to do Anjali, even to do the triple homage, Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa, or the triple homage and the 3 refuges. Like those aren't too difficult to teach them. If you keep a shrine in your house, like to do that in the presence of the shrine, or to clean the shrine up and even maybe light candles and incense and place some flowers on the shrine. So those simple acts of puja, devotion, and paying respects to a Buddha shrine can be nice. On a day like today, where it is the Asalha Puja, it's a special Uposatha day, just telling him that story or reading him that story, even if it's in brief. So one can find various tellings of that on the internet, and just introducing to the concept that this is a special day, and telling them what happened this day in Buddhist history and the significance of it. That can be nice. Uh, Something very common in the Buddhist world is reading Jataka stories to kids. So, and that can be good fun. There's some amazing stories there. So don't always square with the world that one finds in the Sutta Pitaka 100%, but okay, let's see. I'm relying more and more on people doing at Pacific Hermitage. So, but I'm looking for questions and comments too. So, Oh, thank you, Cher. I meant to do this earlier. Hopefully, people haven't left yet. um, just a reminder, the second of the Jhana series will premiere today at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So set a reminder. Actually, if you go to YouTube, you can click the bell to all or something. But also, I think when it starts to get close to the time, you can say set a reminder. And if you happen to be on your computer or depending on what kind of phone you use, you can get a reminder that it's happening. But I don't think I'm going to have guests here today at that time, and I have another talk to give this morning. So I don't think I will be there live today, but it's certainly on the agenda today, the second jhana talk. So good morning, Brock. Okay, I like questions like this. These are easy. When does a monk have to decide where to reside during the Vassa? He needs to decide by tomorrow morning, is the short answer. So today is the Uposatha day, and then tomorrow one needs to decide where he's going to take up residence. And then there's like a commitment, like there's certain circumstances where one can go away for a couple of days because somebody's in danger of disrobing, or there's a physical danger, or um, one needs to go visit their family or something. But once he makes that determination, then he needs to reside in that place. He can wait until the second month of the season and then determine to stay in a place, because there's 4 months in the rainy season, and you just need to spend 3 of them in one place. But the tradition is to determine it, unless there's some good reason, is to determine it tomorrow. So, and there's stories in the suttas where monks were traveling and trying to get to a particular place, or still wandering around looking for a good place to spend the Vassa season, and they ran out of time. So then they just ended up determining the place that they were at. So, hello again, Eleanor. Let's see. Do you sometimes have bad days? Or you no longer have bad days now that you're a monk? Well, having or not having bad days doesn't have anything to do with being a monk. Um, it's kind of the quality of your spiritual development. So, and I still have bad days. I still suffer. So I can say that much. Um, it seems like it's all relative. So, but it seems like they're a lot less bad than they used to be, or a lot less bad than they once could have been. So, which gives me confidence I'm on the right path. Oh yeah, and this is great. I'm sure many of you are aware of this, but here's another one. Listening to the stories from Margot McLaughlin, like her telling of the Jatakas is fantastic. 5-star. She does a beautiful job. I wish I had those kinds of talents for storytelling. Okay, one more follow up, and then I have to get on with the day. So, what do you do when you have bad days? Could you give us a concrete example of how you handle it? uh, I try to get real careful. When you realize that you're not, the mind isn't as strong as you'd like it to be, and there's more tendency to frustration or annoyance or anxiety or anything like that, you want to get real heedful. You want to be real careful. And if possible, start adjusting what it is that you're going to engage in during the day. And if you can, carve out some extra time to strengthen one's mind. So I almost never, ever just write it off as a bad day, which is something I used to do. And the day starts unfolding and some unfortunate things start happening, either unfortunate emotional reactions or things aren't going your way or something unfortunate has happened. And I remember, like, you start worrying early on, like, oh no, this is gonna turn into a bad day. Or this is turning into a bad day. You start fearing this is gonna be a bad day. Um, and that's a Saṅgārava. I mean, that's like a creation, as if the day is somehow some sort of binary. There's good days and there's bad days. And you start creating this story, like, here we have evidence that this is going to be one of those bad days. Like, uh, that's a way to sort of frame your experience that is absent the whole notion of right effort and the possibility to change things. So, um, so I don't do that. Um, and what I do is I try to bring to resolve um, any of the tendencies that are turning it into a bad day. So if there's anxiety in the mind, try to settle that out. If there's anger, try to settle that out. Try to be very careful about what I say, what I do, and even what I think. If you notice the mind is prone to one of these unskillful, afflictive emotions. So, and, making an extra effort to go do something good for yourself or for another or for your community, um, that can be a very skillful thing to do when things aren't going your way. So, uh, listening to Dhamma. So, in short, you get real careful when you're having a bad day and you put forth effort to try to make it a good day, or at least minimize the the harm that one might do to oneself and others. So, okay. So, I hope there are no bad days out there. There's still quite a few hours, so if it's off to a bad start, you can do something about that. So, make it a good one. And if you have some time, as it's the Uposatha day, spend some time recollecting that and honoring and venerating and feeling a sense of gratitude for living in the time of the Gautama Buddha. And he has expounded the Dhamma and successfully communicated in a way that has lasted a very long time now and transformed the lives of who knows how many beings. And the possibility for us to benefit from that and to be transformed by that is still very much alive in the world, and to be in relationship with others who have done that or are engaged in efforts to do that. So Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. So some people call this Dhamma Day, so which is kind of a very American way to think of it instead of the Asalha Puja. But have a happy Dhamma Day. Bye for now.